intercepted a small number of boats in the Channel, despite fairly rough conditions today. It follows new figures that show the number of people making the dangerous journey trebled from last year. There were more than 28,000 illegal crossings in 2021. Politics, and Sir Keir Starmer has insisted Labour is a patriotic party and said if voted into government, he'd write a new chapter of its history. Speaking to local politicians in Birmingham, the Labour leader said he offered a new contract with the British people based on the principles of security, prosperity and respect. He added his party would create 100,000 new start-up businesses and hubs of excellence. And as you've been hearing, in the United States, the judge ruling over the civil sex lawsuit against the Duke of York has told the court he will make a decision pretty soon as to whether or not to dismiss the case. Virginia Giuffre is suing Prince Andrew for alleged sexual assault when she was a teenager 2 decades ago. The Duke's legal team deny all the allegations. Yesterday, a document was made public revealing the terms of a $500,000 payout from convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein to Miss Giuffre, which prevented her from speaking publicly. Sport, and Novak Djokovic will play at the Australian Open after being granted a medical exemption from being vaccinated against COVID. Tournament bosses confirmed earlier the Serbian will defend his title, even though being vaccinated is a requirement to play in the tournament in Melbourne. The reason for being granted the exception will be private, according to the tournament director, Craig Tiley. The Australian Open will begin later on this month. That's all from me. I'm back in an hour. Now let's get back to Dan and Tonight.
Given the very promising way a huge number of cases of Omicron, for most people just a common cold, let's be honest, has not resulted in increased mortality, you would have thought we would have had a very different narrative coming from the doomsday duo Chris Whitty and Patrick Vallance at today's dreaded Downing Street press conference. Chance would be a fine thing. Instead, you had Whitty once again behind his slides, admitting there is no evidence of any surge in deaths, while at the same time trying to keep the population terrified of contracting the cron.
That this is a mild disease as opposed to less likely to be hospitalised, I think is easily demonstrated to be incorrect based on these data. One thing which we have seen, and which is obviously extremely good news compared to where we were with previous waves, is that the mortality rate does not appear to have risen. The numbers have been artificially low over the last 2 or 3 days because it's a long weekend, and will be artificially high tomorrow, but we are not seeing the surge in mortality that we saw in previous waves. But there will be people, particularly people who are vulnerable for other reasons, because of age or medical conditions, who will sadly die of this.
How can anyone take his scaremongering seriously anymore? Despite the best efforts of the lockdown lobbyists at the BBC, Boris did not give in and announce any more restrictions. So I guess we're meant to be happy that Plan BS is continuing, even though we were told these measures would not go on for a single moment longer than necessary. That said, at least Boris is prepared to stand up to his scaremongering scientific advisors, unlike Nicola Sturgeon or Mark Drakeford. Here's the truth. All of the people calling for further lockdown measures were wrong. And Boris was right to finally start talking loudly this evening about the huge economic, social and health destruction caused by lockdowns, something that has been missing in these press conferences for far too long.
It's the effect on people's lives and livelihoods of lockdowns, which are painful, which take away people's life chances, and which do a great deal of social damage to people's mental health, as well as damage to the economy. So it's a difficult balance to strike.
Shame on the Labour Party for lobbying for further restrictions pre-Christmas to score cheap political points.
The thing that our experience in the pandemic tells us is that action sooner rather than later means that the strength of the restrictions and the impact on people's lives, livelihoods and liberties is lowered. So action sooner rather than later would be better rather than worse.
Let's just remember that. Labour wanted us in lockdown before Christmas. They were wrong. But now Boris and the government must go further to restore our freedoms and put us on a genuine path to learning to live with COVID. The CDC in the USA and the ultra-cautious French administration, which, let's not forget, has banned eating and drinking on trains, have both reduced the COVID isolation period to 5 days. But England is stubbornly keeping it at 7 days, assuming you have tested negative on a lateral flow test for 2 days in a row. We need to immediately reduce the isolation period to 5 days to ensure society doesn't grind to a halt. That's what the Federation of Small Businesses called for today too. Now, this is interesting. The CDC said the virus is more infectious in the 2 days before and 3 days after symptoms appear, meaning 5 days locked up at home is more than enough. Right now, with at least 1 million Brits in self-isolation, there is the risk of school closures, further rail cancellations and business shutdowns because of a lack of staff. That is not learning to live with COVID, and it will be disastrous for the economy. Let me bring my superstar panel now to respond. Former Daily Star editor Dawn Neeson, she's their current columnist too. The Conservative commentator and GBNews presenter Calvin Robinson, and the author and journalist Rebecca Reed. So, Dawn, look, in some ways there were positive signs tonight, because for how long have we been calling on Boris Johnson at these press conferences to actually talk about the damage of lockdowns, when you've got those idiots at the BBC like Hugh Pym demanding yet again more restrictions should be introduced?
But, Dan, we've had modelling for every aspect of this, all the really scary stuff, and the modelling has never been accurate. And Neil Ferguson was predicting between 3,000 and 5,000 deaths a day by this stage without restrictions. That's a bit.
And we were at 43 today.
Yes.
By the way, 43.
Amazing. So we've had all the modelling for that, but we've never had any modelling for the actual effects on mental health, the actual effects on the economy. And just for once, I actually thought, well, OK, this is a bit positive, despite, as you say, Chris Whitty going, in theory, this is positive news. No, mate, it is positive news. Not in theory, it is actually positive. Your slide actually even shows us that. So it is good, but the whole 5-day thing, I do not understand. As you point out, even France, who have banned eating popcorn in cinemas. I mean, why?
And you can't swig a beer on a train now, because that's going to stop you getting COVID, right?
Of course it is, yeah, because COVID can tell what you're doing and what you're drinking, can't it? But even if they have gone down to 5 days and the medical science actually says that it works, why aren't we doing it?
I mean, Rebecca Reed, do you concede that a lot of these zealots pre-Christmas now, you know, Drakeford, Sturgeon, who did impose measures, Labour, who wanted to impose measures, just got this one flat wrong?
I think it's been a really interesting thing generally for kind of looking at devolved administrations, because it has shed light on how unfair it is that you can have a different rule if you live on one side of a road from another. And I think particularly in Wales, and we never seem to talk about Wales, we talk about Scotland all the time, we never talk about Wales, but they have had a really, really hard time.
Yeah, and by the way, do you know that even in the past 7 days, their case rates remain way higher than England, so it hasn't worked.
I would imagine part of that is that they have a very high prevalence of people on 0 hours contracts who cannot afford. If you ring in and say, sorry, I've got COVID, they don't go, cool, we'll pay you for 10 days. Most of the time, that's 10 days, no money. So a lot of people are going into work anyway because they can't afford not to, whereas they
get fined £60
but you might
in Wales
but if you
go to the office.
If you're caught, which I think people are just sucking on a strepsil hoping for the best. But if it was 5 days, you'll be more likely to say, OK, well, look, 10 days of money was maybe too much. 5 days I possibly could afford, therefore I won't go, and then 5 more people in your office don't get ill.
But Calvin, that's even if you are well in Wales. I mean, I just feel, I actually flagged it in my digest last night, but I feel like we need to talk about it more. Yeah. You know, people who are perfectly healthy in Wales can turn up at their workplace to do an honest day's work and be fined £60 because they are breaking Welsh law. And you've got Keir Starmer today in some sort of pathetic State of the Nation speech, which I'm not playing you any of, because let me tell you, it was so boring, it was so dull, and there were no specifics. But even he would not condemn Mark Drakeford for going way too far with these lockdown policies.
Well, first of all, welcome back. Merry Christmas.
Thank you, to you too.
It's bonkers, isn't it? We need to stop testing healthy people. I've seen people on Twitter who I can't verify that have said they've gone into work, they've tested positive, they've been sent home from work, and then they've looked into the test and found they tested negative for COVID-19, but the coronavirus they tested positive for was actually just the common cold. So people are being sent home who aren't actually seriously ill. Even if they had Omicron, you can still work with Omicron. It's like a cold. People are testing themselves whether they have symptoms or not, and even if they do have symptoms, they're not that bad. We can get on with it, surely.
I think also there's a difference between taking a couple of days off at the beginning, like a lot of people would for a cold, and taking 10 days off. When I had Omicron over Christmas, the first couple of days I probably could have gone into the office if I had to, but probably wouldn't have done. The last 8 days I could have been, I say run a marathon, I couldn't run a marathon anyway, but if I had been able to run a marathon previously, I would have been able to then.
And that's so fascinating to me for a couple of reasons, because you have been very conscious of trying to avoid Omicron. You did everything right, so it just shows you how infectious this thing is.
My husband did go to the gym, which I do blame him for.
That's his fault.
That wasn't super careful, but I didn't go and see Spider-Man, which I really wanted to do because I didn't want to get Omicron. But I think
so the message is just live your life, right?
Everyone's going to get it. Everyone, particularly if you live in a city, everyone's going to get it. I do genuinely think it's quite different from classic COVID. I really do.
It is.
I think this is. I don't think that was a cold.
Yeah.
Classic COVID really can be quite horrid. Omicron, really?
I've had it. It sticks.
Exactly.
It sticks in the ears, the nose, and the throat. I completely agree. It's not particularly pleasant for the first couple of days, but it is no worse than a cold. And what annoys me, Dawn, is how often now we're being told to ignore the science. So the CDC in the US, they've made a lot of mistakes, but they have looked at when you're most infectious with Omicron. And actually, it's before you get the symptoms.
Yeah.
So actually, that means there's loads of people out there who are spreading it with no idea they're spreading it, and that's life. That's what happens. Then it's the 3 days after you get the symptoms. So by the time you come to 5 days, you can't actually spread the thing, even if you're still coughing.
Which is...
Because the cough lasts for quite some time, so you can go into work even if you are coughing. So we actually also have to stop this shaming, because I still cough every now and then. But I've been negative for days and days and days and days and days. It's just that the thing lingers a little bit.
Well, we're not following the science, are we? And
No.
I don't believe that, the brothers Grimm and Boris have been following the science from day one on this. They've been following some weird modelling and living in some doomsday scenario the whole time. And why have we spent so much time terrorising and causing anxiety deliberately? And Boris today saying, I care about children's health. He's the one making kids wear masks in school.
Well, he's got like 45 kids, Dawn. He's got to be careful. I mean, in any given school, that's probably one of Boris Johnson's kids.
Boris Johnson came out and said it's clearly nonsensical to have kids wearing masks in school. He said you can't expect to teach with masks, you can't expect to learn with masks.
No.
And now the Education Secretary is implementing a policy.
And the actual science has proven that it is bad for education, it's bad for mental
if
health.
you were going to do masks, you would need to do the proper heavy duty.
Yes, and then not.
And then you had to buy them all, give them all to kids, and they had to change them every 4 hours.
Which, by the way, is what they're doing in parts of the US. And it's like, let's learn to live with this thing. I think it is utterly appalling.
At least that's sensible.
Well, I know, but I think it's utterly appalling that we're doing this to our kids. We're not doing it to adults, when we're not doing it to cabinet ministers, when we're not doing it to the staff at number 10 Downing Street.
Well, you know what?
Some are, but our leaders... I know, but our leaders aren't.
But you know why we're doing
this,
don't you, Dan? We know why we're doing it, because the unions are putting so much pressure on the government. It's ridiculous that the government is falling.
Exactly.
Thank you. to the unions.
I don't want a single... My job as an adult is to look after children.
Totally.
I don't want a single child damaged mentally or physically or educationally for the sake of me.
But if you're going to do it, at least do it properly. The worst possible world is that you're all wearing a dirty bit of paper. Everyone's uncomfortable, and it's
But we don't want to do
stupid.
it properly. The government doesn't want to do it properly because they know that it's absolutely
Well, it's
impossible
unmanageable.
to mask up tens of millions of people with proper surgical masks.
But you'd need 3 a
that you have
day
to
per
replace.
child.
Exactly.
It's not.
So it's not going to
Why are we
happen.
picking on children again? Haven't they suffered enough?
Well, of course, but surely...
Well, they don't vote, I guess. So
No, they don't vote.
that's something.
And also, this is all about appeasing adults and appeasing teachers and appeasing parents. But I think what we need to do now is stop all the COVID theatre. So, yes, stop the asymptomatic testing of adults. Just stop it. Stop testing kids at school unless they are very sick. Stop wearing masks anywhere. We have to put our foot down. So, look, I will praise Boris Johnson for some green shoots today because
Exactly.
I did see some.
Yes.
And we have to celebrate that because it's bad across continental Europe. It's bad in Australia. It's bad in New Zealand. It's bad in all of the democratic states in the US. It's bad in Wales. It's bad in Scotland. So I will praise Boris for doing some things right, but he's got to go further. It's not enough.
Quite.
Boris has fallen in the polls, his party's fallen in the polls, and they're losing by-elections. So there's no wonder he's changing tact, is there?
Well, it's about time. Dawn Neeson, Calvin Robertson and Rebecca Reid, my superstar panel, and they are here all night. But coming up, as the first migrants crossing of 2022 takes place, will this be another record year? GB News star Nigel Farage debates if and how we can break this cycle in What the Farage shortly. The next, should Prince Andrew be stripped of his titles and banished from Windsor forever? Royal correspondent Jenny Bond and SAS trooper turned TV personality Phil Campion will go head-to-head in a right royal rumble. The clash is after the break, and you've still got time to let me know what you think too. My email address, dan@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me using the handle @GBNews. My poll's running there too. I cannot wait for your verdict. That's in just a few minutes' time.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. Things have turned a bit colder and tomorrow will feel certainly chilly, but with a bit more sunshine and with lighter winds, probably won't feel quite as cold as it did today. Quite quickly tomorrow evening, however, we're going to see a frost returning. Follow the isobars. They point all the way up to the north, which is where our air is coming from. The isobars still pretty close together across the northeast, but a very, very windy day here. And still those winds continue to bring wintry showers across the northeast throughout the night. So there is the potential for snow showers and a continued risk of ice across the northeast, but it could also be icy across parts of Wales and Northern Ireland, with showers coming in here and temperatures dropping close to freezing. Most towns and cities just about staying above zero, but certainly rural areas there will be a frost. But actually for most it'll be a fine, bright, cold start to Wednesday. Still some showers for Northern Ireland and Wales, some snow on the hills, but they should fade away. And the showers also fading from the far northeast. Still a cold wind blowing along these North Sea coast, but for most the wind's a lot lighter during tomorrow, and with largely sunny skies. Temperatures still a touch below average, but as I said, probably feeling a bit more pleasant than today. Quite quickly though, look at the blue taking hold of the map. This is tomorrow evening. Quite quickly a frost forming, temperatures dropping with those light winds and clear skies. So it's going to be a very cold start to Thursday. Towns and cities likely to be -1, -2. Rural areas -5, -6, maybe -10, where there's snow lying on the mountains of Scotland. Now it will slowly turn milder across Northern Ireland as wet weather comes in here. Mostly rain, but some snow on the hills. And we'll see that then working into Wales, Northern England, Scotland. Rain at low levels, but some snow on the higher routes here for a time on Thursday. Further south, it'll be all rain as things eventually turn milder, but another cold day across the east, and again turning frosty with the potential for some ice on Thursday night.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Nigel Farage and Darren Grimes both on the way very shortly, but time now for the clash. And earlier today, Prince Andrew's lawyers pleaded their case in a US court to have the sexual abuse civil lawsuit against him dismissed. In a last-ditch attempt, the disgraced Duke's legal team argued that he was protected by a 2009 settlement between Virginia Giuffre and Jeffrey Epstein, in which she agreed not to sue any other potential defendant. Judge Lewis Kaplan has promised that Andrew's fate will be revealed pretty soon. But on what could be another blow to the royal, top army chiefs want Andrew to quit his 9 military roles should his case not be thrown out. One former senior member of the Royal Irish Regiment said he is now regarded as toxic and an embarrassment. He is so badly damaged that there is no way back, and the best thing he can now do is give up all his military titles and permanently sever his links with the armed forces. Army chiefs are hoping the prince will quit before the Queen has to strip the titles from him. But what do you think? Should Prince Andrew be stripped of his military titles and banished from Windsor permanently? To debate this, I am joined by former SAS trooper Phil Campion and the royal commentator Jenny Bond. So, Phil, you say Prince Andrew needs to go.
Yeah, I'm not quite as harsh as the said officer that said that about him. But where I'm coming from is if I came back to camp after a weekend and said I was facing a similar thing to Andrew right now, they'd say, right, you're going to have to take some gardening leave minimum. And that's what he needs to do, to stop his mother having to make a decision further down the line. OK, he's innocent until proven guilty. We all know that. And hopefully he'll see this all the way through to the end. And if he's got nothing to worry about, he won't be bothered. But I think the gentleman thing for him to do would be just to step aside, hand everything in, say, right, I'll deal with this. I'll deal with this case. And then when it's all whatever happens at the end of it, we'll pick up and pick up from what we've got left and go forward with that from there on. And it would just take a lot of the sting out of the tail at the moment. Do you know what I mean? Otherwise, if it does come on top and it does go further down the line, other people are going to have to make decisions that perhaps they shouldn't have to make.
Jenny Bond, isn't that the point? Prince Andrew shouldn't be putting his mother in this position because, look, we know that he's the Queen's favourite son. This is really difficult for her at her age, but she's been forced into quite a difficult position because he won't stand down.
Well, she has already sacked him, actually, from all his royal duties. He still has these 9 military titles. And yes, there is an argument that perhaps he should stand aside. I think Phil makes a good point. But we do have a convention in this country, don't we, that you're innocent until you're proven guilty. So I think it's premature now to ask him to give up all his military titles. He hasn't carried out any engagements to do with his military titles since he stood back from royal duties. And so I think we should wait the outcome of this case, which could rumble on a long time. But at the moment, yeah, he must be presumed innocent. I mean, imagine, you say the Queen's in a difficult position. Of course she is. How would any of us feel if our child, I know he's a grown man, but he is the Queen's child, her son, if we heard that our child was accused of something like this? I mean, we'd do our very utmost to believe our child, wouldn't we, and stand by them until it was proved otherwise.
Well, yes, I do understand that, but Phil Campion, there's quite an easy way, isn't there, for him to deal with this, which is get on a plane, go to New York, say I will spend as much time with the FBI and the authorities as necessary in order to clear my name. Instead, Phil, he wants to use this legal loophole because Virginia signed this $500,000 deal with proven pedo Epstein. And I'm sorry, if Andrew thinks that's the way to clear his name in terms of the court of public opinion, I think he is delusional, Phil.
I think what you're saying there about parents wanting the kid to do the right thing is absolutely prevalent here as well. And the right thing for him to do is to say, right, I'm going to put all that down. Everything I'm doing at the moment, I'm going to put down. I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to go and prove my innocence, okay? And be a bit more proactive to let people see that actually I'm not going to stand there and be treated like this. I'm going to go and sort this out. I'm going to go stand and face whatever comes at me because I am innocent. And I'd love to see him doing a bit more of that. I'd love to see him being a bit more proactive. And ultimately, you know, if he's done nothing wrong, he's got nothing to hide. He's got no reason why he shouldn't stand there, proud as a pin, and turn around and say, no, come and judge me. Come on, I'm here. You know, and I'd like to see him do that because, you know, he's supposed to be an officer and a gentleman. But the gentlemanly thing on this would not be to hide behind lawyers, would not be to do this, do that, do the other, would be to stand up and be counted for it. And you know, his mother must want him to come out on top. Of course she does. We all do, secretly. Do you know what I mean? I think. I don't want to see him done with something heinous as what's being written down there. But I think he's got to do more about his public image to protect the image of not only the royal family, but of the military as well. It's the military's image that's going down the pan with this if it all goes completely wrong for him. And so far, do you know what I mean? I think he's playing it a little bit wrong. He should stand up and be counted a little bit more. He should be more vocal on how innocent he actually is, and let people know.
Yeah, because Jenny Bond, that's the issue, isn't it? Even if the judge does throw out this lawsuit because Virginia had signed this deal with Epstein, that's not a win for Prince Andrew. That doesn't clear his name in the eyes of the public.
No, I think he's got a terrifically difficult job to clear his name in the eyes of the public. And it looks as if the judge actually is quite forcefully pushing back Andrew's lawyer's case. He's made a number of remarks today which would suggest that he may come down on the side of Virginia Giuffre. So I think this may, in fact, have to go to trial. Andrew has never been his best advocate, really, his own worst enemy in so many ways. He is a rather arrogant man. I think he'd find it very hard to stand back voluntarily from his military titles, which mean a great deal to him, I'm sure. I mean, he did see active service, we have to remember, in the Falklands. And I'm sure he was very brave, and it means a great deal to him. So I think he would feel that if he stood back now, that would be seen as a presumption of guilt. But Dan, I think you are right. If he settles out of court, that would also be seen by the public as a presumption of guilt.
Phil, can you understand why these military men and women do not want to toast the good health of Prince Andrew and do not want to salute him? And while he retains these honorary titles, they have to do both of those things.
Not that they don't want to salute or toast him. While he's got that stuff hanging over him, it would be rather duplicitous of them when, you know, I've seen case histories of other soldiers facing, you know, charges of that nature or a similar nature who've been relieved from their duties almost straight away. Okay. Now, should it come back to what we're saying, that he goes over there and represents himself, I think it would iron out a load of these problems we've got with it at the moment. Do you know what I mean? But at the minute, you know, these are proud military men and women, okay, who are being asked to salute something with that attached to it at the moment. And it's not right. It's not good. Do you know what I mean? Let him prove his innocence, you know. And the fact that you've got the other thing that's playing on my mind at the moment is, all right, okay, the technicality that might see all this to an end is the fact that she was paid 500 grand. Am I morally right to just accept that if I've got 500 grand, I can put someone off the scent? Because that is absolutely wrong to me. That's despicable. He needs to go out there and say, I don't care what you've got, where you got it from. Prove that I did that. Prove that I did that. Go on, stand up and prove that I did it. And if you can't, shut up.
Jenny Bond, how does this play out now? Because I almost feel a sense of inevitability that the Queen will end up having to strip him of these military titles. Can you understand why Prince Charles and Prince William behind the scenes feel very uncomfortable and would like their mother and grandmother to take action sooner if possible?
Well, yes, I can see that because, it is damaging the brand of royalty. Absolutely, I can see that. And I do accept that there is an anomaly, an injustice, you could say, that Andrew still has his military titles and Harry has not. Harry simply did, you could say, the honourable thing in saying, look, I can't hack this anymore. I don't want this job anymore, and was told, well, you can't have the military titles that go with it. So it is strange that Andrew at the moment is allowed to keep his. I can see that anomaly, but there's just part of me saying that the man, imagine if he is totally innocent. As he claims and says, he completely denies all the allegations. Maybe he has been badly, badly wronged here. I think we've just got to let it play out. Let the legal people decide the case, whether it's going to go ahead, whether it's going to get a trial, and let a jury decide. And then action will have to be taken, if necessary, against Prince Andrew.
Legendary royal commentator and correspondent Jenny Bond, thank you so much for being here. And before that, the SAS trooper Phil Campion too. So who do you agree with? Mickey on Twitter says, if he's found guilty by a jury of his peers in accordance with the law, then yes, but not because of rumour and speculation. So he's agreeing with Jenny. And says, it is not easy to prove you are innocent. It is much easier for others to prove you're guilty. I do not blame Prince Andrew any which way to stop this claim. And Stable says, I don't see how he could be banished from Windsor, as that is where the Queen mainly lives, and although it is owned by the nation, it would be up to the Queen. And that's very true. She's hardly going to boot out her favourite son. Your verdict now in. 78% of you agree that Prince Andrew should lose his titles and be banished by the Queen, while 22% of you say he shouldn't. This story is going to run and run. Now, coming up, as more than 400 churches close in less than a decade, is Britain turning its back on religion? GB News star Darren Grimes, who found God thanks to Twitter, investigates in The Outsider. The next, New Year, same crisis in the Channel as the first migrants land. Nigel Farage asks what we can do. He's here straight after the break.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
We're back and it's time for What the Farage. The first migrants of 2022 arrived in Dover in Kent this morning shouting, "We love the UK." These pictures, taken by our home and security editor Mark White and his team, show 40 men, women and children and a baby coming ashore. It comes as new figures show a record number of more than 28,000 migrants crossed from France to the UK in 2021. more than 3 times the year before. Nigel, I mean, how many more crossings does there have to be before the government gets a grip on this? It's January. It's freezing cold out there. They're still coming.
Yeah, more than that, Dan. And hello, Happy New Year to everybody.
Happy New Year.
The interesting thing about this is it's been blowing a hoolie for the last week. 30, 40 mile an hour winds every day the last 5, 6, 7 days, right? And overnight, by the morning, it'll be blowing northwesterly 30 miles an hour. This was a very tight weather window. I mean, literally about 12 hours when the wind got down to about 10 miles an hour. Now, 15 is about the number. It's over 15, very difficult for those dinghies to get across. And the way the traffickers assembled people on the beach last night at Dunkirk, even though it was rough, waited for it to be just about okay to launch off, shows you how professional they've become, how knowledgeable they've become about weather, tides, everything else. And I think, given there are no disincentives whatsoever, oh yes, we'll put traffickers in prison for life. These people are making millions. It doesn't matter what penalty you put on the traffickers. If the incentive is for those that want to come to pay their 3,000, 5,000 euros, whatever the going rate is at the time, they'll go on coming. I made a big shout last year in March. I said it'd be 20,000. I then upped that in May to 30,000. Well, I wasn't too far out, was I? With 28,300. This year, at least 60,000, maybe 80,000. Wow. And of course, the impact of this, there's Mark White and I out in the channel just about 10, 12 weeks ago. And what's now happening, Dan, is these people are being dispersed all over the country. There are 17 times the number of asylum seekers in the northeast being placed in hotels than there are in the southeast. I got a text tonight from a Suffolk County councillor to say hundreds are now being sent to Suffolk. And what's happening is every town in the country is getting a bit of what is happening in Dover. And the impact of this on the Red Wall for Boris Johnson is catastrophic. I'm not overusing that word. These people, lifelong Labour voters who believed in Brexit, wanted immigration controls, they switched to UKIP, they switched to the Brexit Party, they voted for Boris en masse in 2019, they wanted the agony of Brexit over, but they thought they were voting for a Prime Minister who would take back control of our borders. And now they find that, frankly, we're lily-livered. We haven't got the guts to take the action required because of the condemnation we get in the international community. And I honestly don't think Boris Johnson's government will do anything.
And Nigel, you talk about the impact on the Red Wall. Well, we saw it in that astonishing Mail on Sunday poll at the weekend, which shows the Tory government now 16 points behind in those constituencies. Surely that's got to be enough to wake up Boris and Pretty. Surely.
It's very interesting because on the same day, and less commented on, was a constituency poll in the Sunday Times. And what that showed in the Red Wall is that Reform UK. Now, I have to declare an interest. I'm the president. I'm an honorary, non-executive president.
Yes.
I'm the old duffer upstairs, you know.
But it's the old. it's the party formerly known as the Brexit Party, which you obviously formed.
Yeah, I formed Reform UK. I was the first leader, and Richard Tice has now taken it over. What was interesting is in those Red Wall seats, Reform was scoring between 10 and 15%. That's the reason. That's the reason he's 16 points behind, is people are saying, you've let us down. We're going to go back to people who actually say what they really mean. So I think Boris's problems are worse than anybody in London realises. There is a new insurgency beginning to the right of where Boris has put the Conservative Party. And here's the rub. These MPs in the Red Wall seats are not your stuffy old Tories. They're not old Etonians. They're former miners and people like that. And they know that if they lose their seats next time round, it's the end of their political careers. They won't get shoved somewhere nice like Surrey. because, you know, they didn't do PPE at Oxford. And so I think these people could become quite mutinous. We saw a specimen of this, about 105 in total, I think it was, Conservatives voted against further restrictions. And I think Boris has got major problems. I would say this, that if Johnson doesn't U-turn on his weak policy on channel crossings and on net zero and its implications for, I mean, millions of people by the spring are literally going to struggle to pay the household bills. I'm not exaggerating. This is real. And those bills will coincide with tax increases. Unless we see some dramatic government action on those two issues, then faith and trust in Johnson will have gone not just from the electorate, but from a large chunk of his own parliamentary party. So I think we're headed for some really quite dramatic Conservative Party politics in the next few months.
Well, yeah, because of course the reason why people are so worried, Nigel, about the exact scenario you paint is that our electoral system, first past the post, means that could see the nightmare scenario of a Labour SNP coalition.
Yes, but it's less of a nightmare with Starmer. I mean, let's be honest. How are Keir Starmer's policies different to Boris Johnson's? I mean, name me one significant difference between the two. They're both high tax, both social democrats, both relaxed about open borders. I mean, what's the difference? I mean, this isn't Jeremy Corbyn. And this is the point. You know, Corbyn may well have been a hero to a small, hard left bunch, but he was anathema to middle of the road, patriotic, working or blue collar Labour voters.
But it could signal the end of the union.
Well, you say that, but you know what you're saying is that the price of it will be a referendum.
Well, I just don't think Labour will have this number of seats to govern alone. You know, to govern alone, they're going to need some sort of coalition with the SNP.
I get that, but there's a long way to go to the next election.
Yeah,
and the Conservative Party also need to finish the Brexit job because there's still work to be done. The deal was not oven ready, as we were told it was. And I think the conclusion, certainly that I've reached, is that Boris Johnson was the right man for 2019. He was the right man at that moment in time. Somebody had to bring the Conservative Party together or it was going to be destroyed. You know, I was going to destroy it. I mean, that's where we were in 2019. They came to their senses. They united around the fact Brexit had to happen. He also, you know, to be fair, won a big majority in the country. You know, his achievements in 2019 as an individual were extraordinary. He was the right man for that moment. Is he the right man for this moment? And I genuinely don't think he is. And I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't a new Conservative leader at the end of the year, which gives them the chance to turn this around.
Yeah, and to go back to what we voted for. No, very good point, Nigel Farage. Thank you so much. And I thought it was a fascinating interview, by the way, with the Israeli official about the talk of a second booster on your show tonight. So if you missed that interview, it will be coming up again at midnight tonight. Nigel, thank you so much. We'll talk again next week. Now, coming up, why hasn't the PM scrapped green levies from energy bills to prevent people having to choose between heating and eating, as Nigel just referred to? Well, Tory MP Craig McKinlay, he's chair of the Net Zero Scrutiny Group of Tory MPs. We'll ask that question at 10:20. It's an important one. But next, as more than 400 churches close in less than a decade, is Britain having a crisis of faith? GBNews star Darren Grimes, who found God on Twitter at one of the lowest points of his life, investigates next.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. Things have turned a bit colder and tomorrow will feel certainly chilly, but with a bit more sunshine and with lighter winds, probably won't feel quite as cold as it did today. Quite quickly tomorrow evening, however, we're going to see a frost returning. Follow the isobars. They point all the way up to the north, which is where our air is coming from. The isobars still pretty close together across the northeast, but a very, very windy day here. And still those winds continue to bring wintry showers across the northeast throughout the night. So there is the potential for snow showers and a continued risk of ice across the northeast, but it could also be icy across parts of Wales and Northern Ireland, with showers coming in here and temperatures dropping close to freezing. Most towns and cities just about staying above zero, but certainly rural areas there will be a frost. But actually for most it'll be a fine, bright, cold start to Wednesday. Still some showers for Northern Ireland and Wales, some snow on the hills, but they should fade away. And the showers also fading from the far northeast. Still a cold wind blowing along these North Sea coasts, but for most the wind's a lot lighter during tomorrow, and with largely sunny skies. Temperatures still a touch below average, but as I said, probably feeling a bit more pleasant than today. Quite quickly though, look at the blue taking hold of the map. This is tomorrow evening. Quite quickly a frost forming, temperatures dropping with those light winds and clear skies. So it's going to be a very cold start to Thursday. Towns and cities likely to be -1, -2. Rural areas -5, -6, maybe -10, where there's snow lying on the mountains of Scotland. Now it will slowly turn milder across Northern Ireland as wet weather comes in here. Mostly rain, but some snow on the hills. And we'll see that then working into Wales, Northern England, Scotland. Rain at low levels, but some snow on the higher routes here for a time on Thursday. Further south, it'll be all rain as things eventually turn milder, but another cold day across the east, and again turning frosty, with the potential for some ice on Thursday night.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview Channel 236.
On Sky, we're Channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
And Widdicombe coming up, but Darren Grimes is tonight's outsider. Now, you know, we talk a lot about statistics on this show, but here's one I'm struggling to get my head around. More than 400 churches have closed in a decade. According to Church of England data, 423 were shut down between 2010 and 2019, threatening the future of parishes and many people's way of life. This shocking figure has got precious little coverage in the mainstream media, but I want to give it a platform. So, Darren Grimes joins me now. And Darren, once we lose these incredible parts of our heritage, we'll never get them back, will we?
No, I think that's exactly right. And I mean, if we think about all of the depressing aspects of the pandemic of the past 2 years, I think, Dan, what the Church of England's response, frankly, has been one of them. I think there was that refusal, if you remember, where priests were unable to actually minister to the dying in hospitals because the church vetoed it, and far too quickly did they shut their doors. So don't get me wrong, I fully understand why people aren't particularly enamoured by our established church at the moment. And I think Archbishop Welby, at a moment when the nation needed spiritual direction more than perhaps it has done since the war, he wasn't there either. A bit like the National Trust, Dan, I think our established church has been found sorely wanting. So I'm not surprised that people aren't turning up to put their bums on seats in our churches in large numbers. But for me, it goes beyond that. For me, it goes beyond a belief in God. For me, it's about preserving that inheritance that we've been given in the form of our churches, and in that fundamental principle there, that there should be a church in every parish, right? There's one church round the corner from me, for example, where for over 900 years, there has been a church on that site. So you think of all of the funerals, you think of all of the christenings, you think of all of the things that have happened in that church, people seeking comfort at some of the hardest times in their life, like I have done in the past. And you might have viewers, Dan, saying, oh God, Dan, why have you got Darren on ranting about this? The God Squad, here we go. But I think actually, if you think about these beautiful old buildings and think about losing them, this is about preserving our cultural inheritance, because once it's gone, it won't return easily, right? As I say, 900 years of history on that site there.
And Darren, tell me a little bit about your personal story, because I've been teasing it throughout the show. You weren't someone who was always very religious. You found God on Twitter.
Absolutely, yes. I followed a priest called Father Marcus Walker, who you should all follow. He's a great tweeter. And during a very difficult time of my life, when I was against the Electoral Commission in court, fighting for our vote for Brexit, I found myself feeling like an ant under a very large state taxpayer-funded boot. And a belief in my faith, in attending church, really, really did help. I went along to one Ash Wednesday service, and that was it for me. And I think for a lot of people, if you've not tried it before, give it a try, because it's a sort of use 'em or lose 'em when it comes to
Well, yes, I was going to say, is that all we can do, Darren? I mean, people who religious in the past, like me, christened Catholic, not practicing, do we need to turn up more? Is that what your rallying cry is tonight?
It would be. That's just one of them. I think there are other movements within the Church of England itself where people are standing up to Archbishop Welby and others and actually saying, look, you need to defend this. If the church isn't there to defend our churches, then who the hell is going to be, right? It strikes me that Her Majesty the Queen, as head of the Church of England, is the only one actually doing a pretty decent job of making the case at the moment, especially during the pandemic. But you've got to just think, whether we like it or not, Dan, whether you're an atheist, an agnostic, or a believer, Christianity has been at the very heart of our values, of who we are as a people here in Britain. Not just here in Britain, actually, here in many Commonwealth countries. The very bedrock of our society, our moral standards, everything that we hold dear, the values of the Enlightenment. People like Adam Smith, right? These people were staunch believers, and that's what drove them to actually proselytize and get forward and say, actually, the liberty of man comes from God, not from the rights of a divine ruler like the king or queen. And those sort of values, they go far beyond Christianity. They go far beyond these things. And our churches are the symbols of these things. So I say, if you value these ancient buildings, if you value what has been built for generation after generation, then you've got to start using these places. Go visit your local church, right? And you will be welcomed. I strongly advise you, you will be welcomed with open arms, as I was back when I first, sort of ventured into a church, not quite knowing whether I was coming or going. But just get out there and try it. That's all I'm saying to you. Because the Save the Parish network can only do so much, right? It comes down fundamentally to us doing it more for ourselves, because it goes back to that fundamental principle of use 'em or lose 'em when it comes to our church.
Darren Grimes, very well put. Thank you for being here as tonight's Outsider. Now, it's coming up to 10 p.m, still to come. Is it time for a real debate about the COVID vaccination scheme as the head of the JCVI declares we cannot jab the world once every 4 to 6 months? Now, Israel is about to launch a 4th jab. But should the UK actually lead the world in saying, save the boosters for the vulnerable? My superstar panel tackle those questions and more of the day's top headlines in the media buzz, including, is Prince Charles wrong to call for a warlike footing against climate change in his latest woke outburst? Now, is Sadiq Khan really about to decriminalise drugs? Political firebrand Anne Widdecombe takes aim at the failed London mayor's bonkers pilot scheme in Uncancelled. Should Boris scrap green levies in order to prevent a cost of living crisis that will force Brits to choose between heating or eating? Tory MP and chair of the Net Zero Scrutiny Group of MPs, Craig McKinlay, pleads his case to the PM at 10:20. And don't go anywhere, because next we'll have a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. And of course, just before the end of the hour, we will crown the next greatest Britain and Union jackass. You don't want to miss that. But first, the news headlines at 10 with Polly Middlehurst.
Very good evening to you. I'm Polly Middlehurst. The Prime Minister has today said over 60% of people in intensive care suffering with COVID are unvaccinated. During a Downing Street briefing earlier, Boris Johnson confirmed the government will roll out daily COVID testing now for 100,000 critical workers. That comes as today's reported cases of COVID have exceeded 200,000 for the first time. Despite the high case numbers, Boris Johnson hasn't announced any new restrictions.
Who thinks our battle with COVID is over, I'm afraid, is profoundly wrong. This is a moment for the utmost caution. Together with the Plan B measures that we introduced before Christmas, we have a chance to ride out this Omicron wave without shutting down our country once again. We can keep our schools and our businesses open, and we can find a way to live with this virus.
Well, away from COVID, more than 70 migrants have made it across the Channel to the UK in the first crossings of the year. Border Force and the Dover lifeboat intercepted a number of small boats in the Channel despite fairly rough conditions. It follows new figures that show the number of people making the dangerous journey across the English Channel trebled last year. There were more than 28,000 illegal crossings in 2021. In the United States, the judge ruling over the civil sex lawsuit against the Duke of York has told the court he will make a decision pretty soon on whether to dismiss the case or not. Virginia Giuffre is suing Prince Andrew for alleged sexual assault when she was a teenager 2 decades ago. The Duke's legal team denies all the allegations. Yesterday, a document was made public revealing the terms of a $500,000 payout from the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein to Miss Giuffre, which prevented her from speaking publicly. The Home Secretary says all historical convictions for consenting gay sex will be pardoned. Priti Patel said more people would have convictions for same-sex sexual activity cleared as she expands the list of former offences in the pardoning scheme. It now includes any former crime involving consenting same-sex adults. Priti Patel says the government aims to right the wrongs of the past. And in sports, Novak Djokovic will play at the Australian Open after being granted a medical exemption from being vaccinated against COVID. Tournament bosses confirmed earlier the Serbian will defend his title even though being vaccinated is meant to be a requirement of playing in Melbourne. The reason for being granted the exemption will remain private, according to the tournament director. The Australian Open will begin later on this month. You're up to date. I'm back in an hour. Now back to Dan and Tonight.
And we're back with tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz. Very first look at the front pages, hot off the press and the Metro. leads with Boris Johnson's decision to stick with Plan BS measures, that's what I call it, and resist further restrictions on our lives in the fight against coronavirus. His briefing came as 200,000 new cases were reported for the first time and 12 hospitals declared critical incidents. Remember, though, Chris Whitty said those cases not turning into higher mortalities, and that's all, that higher mortality rates, which is all that matters. The Independent reports that health leaders have warned of patient care coming under threat after Boris Johnson insisted today that England can ride out the Omicron wave. The Royal College of Nursing chief Pat Cullen has claimed that nurses watched the Downing Street press conference at disbelief at Johnson's refusal to introduce further restrictions. Don't know why. They seem to want us into perpetual lockdown, don't they? Lockdowns every winter. That's what the NHS would want. My superstar panel back with me now. It's the former Daily Star editor, Dawn Neeson, the Conservative commentator, Calvin Robinson, and the author and journalist, Rebecca Reid. Now, this is important. You won't see it discussed much in the rest of the media, but we're going to talk about it. In a bombshell interview, one of the country's top vaccine chiefs has stuck his head above the parapet and refused the need to get continuous boosters. Speaking to the Daily Telegraph, Professor Sir Andrew Pollard, chair of the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation, said that the most at risk should be identified and prioritised instead. He told the paper, we can't vaccinate the planet every 4 to 6 months. It's not sustainable or affordable. In the future, we need to target the vulnerable. Also, in this hugely significant interview that has been largely ignored by the BBC, of course, he stated that before the rollout of a fourth vaccine, more strong evidence is needed. Now, that's very strong stuff coming from the man who was behind the development of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. I couldn't agree more, to be honest, Calvin Robinson. But what's so fascinating about this is you have top epidemiologists like Professor Sunitra Gupta at Oxford University being seriously criticised and slammed by most of the scientific and media establishment for saying exactly this for a long time.
Well, the pressure on Professor Sir Andrew must have been immense. So bravo to him for standing up for what he believes in and being principled there. But he's right, isn't he? Of course he's right. We shouldn't be having jabs every 6 months or every 3 months now, isn't it?
Well, they say the immune response fades after 10 weeks.
But surely natural immunity is stronger. And if Omicron is as weak as a common cold, let's all catch the Omicron, unless you're vulnerable. If you're vulnerable, of course, take a vaccine if you feel that's best.
But exactly, but Sunitra Gupta,
wasn't it?
Yeah, and Sunitra Gupta, Dawn, has said it should only ever have been the vulnerable that were being vaccinated, and that would have been the way out. Because it's fascinating for me to see in the news with Polly there, you've got Djokovic being allowed into Australia. Now, I say that's a great thing, but how are Australian citizens going to feel about that when, if you're unvaccinated in Australia, you are literally a second-class citizen?
And like in your homeland, Dan, where if you're unvaccinated, you are a second-class citizen.
And the Prime Minister boasts about that. But maybe this is important, Dawn, because maybe all of these stories add up to be a change of conversation where we're not going to start, isolating the unvaccinated.
Well, and I think this is very important. I do think there is a change in the air now. I think we are finally starting to get people speaking out. And
because, of course, there is, Dawn, because we all had our, well, not all of us, but some of us had our boosters and still got Omicron.
Exactly. But, I mean...
and we did it to be good boys and girls, or, in my case, to be able to travel. Bloody work.
But he's saying, look, the worst is absolutely behind us. We just need to get through the winter. And at some point, society has to open up and we have to start living with this. And now, a lot of us have been saying this for months. And suddenly, though, we have people who know what they're talking about saying the same thing.
Although, Rebecca Reid, you say actually it's not a big burden on anyone to be vaccinated once every 6 months.
I mean, I certainly am not so short on time that I can't pop down to the local chemist and get jabbed every 6 months if I feel inclined to. I, like everybody else on GBNews, don't feel like it should be mandated. I don't think any form of healthcare should be mandated. My body, my choice in all things. However, there are a lot of jabs, like the flu jab, where if you are somebody who is worried about getting flu, you do have to have it every year. You know, your tetanus jab doesn't last forever. We have to get topped up on things that we feel strongly about. And also, this is a relatively relatively new piece of medical technology, and I imagine the idea is to develop it so that it does last longer, but they are doing their best with it. All the scientists are really trying.
But the fact that it's new also means that there are significant side effects, and yes, they are rare, but they can be deadly.
Well, most people do feel a bit rubbish after they've had it. I think that's totally...
Well, no, but yes.
And people's periods have been messed up.
Yeah, but you can also die.
Yeah, I mean, the dying thing is relatively unusual. Like, you are more likely...
Of course it is, but it's also relatively unusual for anyone healthy to die of COVID-19. So I think it's so important we start changing the conversation.
I disagree. I think it should be a personal choice, but I think probably the most sensible choice to make, as long as you feel comfortable with it,
But do you really feel like it's a personal choice at the moment when you have the Prime Minister literally, virtually every day demanding that citizens get jabbed and actually saying quite clearly that it's irresponsible if you don't, when you have Trudeau in Canada saying you're racist and you're sexist if you don't get jabbed.
I mean,
where you have Jacinda Ardern saying you'll be a second-class citizen if you're not jabbed.
I think there are countries where it is less of a free choice. I think in Australia they are making it very difficult. I think in New Zealand they're making it very difficult.
Austria.
Here, in Austria, very, very difficult. Here, I don't care. If Taylor Swift was telling me to get vaccinated, I might feel personally targeted. The fact that Boris Johnson does makes me less likely to want to. I don't want to do anything that makes Boris Johnson happy.
But when our government says that the most important thing you can do is get the jab.
Well, I don't listen to anything the government say. They also told me to quit smoking and
they're not talking about,
So you did your own research, is what you're saying?
No, I just don't like being told what to do by anybody.
But you also said it's relatively low risk of dying. And we have to say that the adverse effects of this vaccine are more so than any other vaccine or any other medically approved procedure that we've had on the market in a long time. If any other vaccine came out with the adverse risks that this vaccine has, it would have been pulled a long time ago.
No other vaccine has been given to this number of people this quickly.
That's not a good thing.
But the maths is different.
But no, that's not true. Because look at Tamiflu. Look in 2009, we had a massive influx of a new vaccine out on the market then, and the adverse effects were too high that they pulled it straight away.
But considerably fewer people were given that.
Because it was pulled.
But Calvin, most people were prepared to be part of the great national effort, right? For their own personal reasons or because they felt that their freedoms were hinged upon this, or because they wanted to protect others. But I get the sense when you're starting to be asked to have a fourth jab, and we've all just caught Omicron, those feelings are going to start fading.
People are going to start asking the question, who benefits from this? If I take a jab and I still get the illness and I still get ill, at roughly the same amount that people who haven't had the jab would do, well, who benefits from it? Only the people making money from it.
And
do you not get? I mean,
it's a cash cow.
My understanding is that you generally get less ill if you.
That was
had
the understanding, but even that's going downhill now.
Absolutely, and that's why, Rebecca, I think some people will continue to want to do it, and that's obviously fine, especially if you're vulnerable. But what's interesting with Sir Andrew Pollard, this is obviously a man who is very much pro-vaccine. I mean, he was a huge part of the development of the Oxford-AstraZeneca
Yeah, but he's
jab.
saying every 3 months for the whole world, not sensible. I agree.
Yeah,
but
and we can't afford
But I think they have been very open that their intention is to make a vaccine that doesn't need to be repeated as quickly. But at the moment,
but that might take a long time.
And I think that will take a while.
I've got a lot of faith in pharmaceuticals. They make money
I
from
do
selling
have a lot of faith in pharmaceuticals because I think they've
they're
really
not
improved the
saviours,
world.
They're not heroes. No, they're businesses out to make money.
Yeah, but
not Oxford-AstraZeneca.
I was going to say, it's very interesting.
Which is why they were the ones that... Go on, Dawn.
The person that's speaking out about this is behind the AstraZeneca
exactly. And to be
not
honest,
for profit.
completely. And I've had a lot more trust in the folk behind the Oxford-AstraZeneca jab through this whole thing.
Yes.
Because unlike Pfizer and Moderna, their share price doesn't go through the roof when all of a sudden the whole world has been told they need to have a booster
And
jab.
plus, there's a very important point to be made here. There are huge numbers of very vulnerable people around the world in poorer countries that
haven't had the first jab. No. Of course. And we need, as Sunitra Gupta said, we need to vaccinate the vulnerable people if they want to be vaccinated.
Yeah, but this is the thing.
In the rest
what
of
we
the world.
can't do is our classic British thing about we're going to help all the poor little people in the poor countries. If they don't want it, it's not for us
Well,
to
they don't want the Oxford-AstraZeneca jab. And that's a whole other story, largely down to the despicable actions of Macron and Merkel, who, for political reasons, and to try and prove a point over Brexit, slammed it and caused untold damage, which is a whole other story. But look, I pride myself, as you know, on holding public figures to account, whoever they may be. But it doesn't feel like Good Morning Britain presenters Richard Bacon and Susanna Reid had the same feeling this morning. That's because the world's most famous glamour model, Katie Price, made her highly anticipated first TV appearance following a drink and drug driving crash in September, which almost saw her jailed and, by the way, could have killed someone. Let's not forget that. Do you know, Katie, who's someone who I've been fond of in the past, she's been banned from driving on 5 separate occasions and was driving while disqualified after a 2-year ban in 2019. Her driving record was described by the judge as one of the worst she had ever seen, and the judge actually wanted to jail Katie but couldn't because of the law. So you would think Katie would get a bit of a hard time in her first national TV interview, right? Well, that's not what happened.
Managed to avoid a jail sentence. Things could have been very different, couldn't they?
They could have done, and the events leading up to it were really traumatic, and it's still been traumatic after, so I'm not ready to talk about it yet.
Fair enough.
But
Absolutely.
it's a new year, and I'm still dealing with it all.
Yeah.
But when I'm ready to talk about it,
and you've been judged. I mean, you know, you've been through the legal process. So
Yeah.
one of the things you are doing, and you do want to talk about, is dry January.
Watch the space.
Katie,
but
I
just
found-
to let everyone know, I am in a very good headspace now.
I found you so impressive in that documentary, and it's just wonderful to see your relationship with Harvey.
Thank you.
You're just wonderful, aren't you, Katie? I mean, viewers were understandably annoyed by that, finding the interview pointless and questioning why she was even asked on the show. I mean, look, Dawn Neeson, I conducted the first interview with Ant McPartlin after his 2 big public incidents, including that drink driving crash. Now, you can conduct an interview compassionately, but you have to ask the questions. And I didn't sit down with Ant McPartlin until I was told that Ant was ready to fully talk about it, absolutely come clean, talk about every aspect of how much he was drinking, what drugs he was taking, because it was absolutely important that as a journalist I held him to account. And in fairness to Ant, he completely opened up and he talked all about what went wrong. And in this case, they basically let Katie Price off the hook.
They did. I think there's a difference between a brief slot on TV and a full sit-down chat like you did with Ant. And the one thing I would be very annoyed with is if they had given Kate a hard time when the TV industry in general let Ant off. I'm not saying the newspaper did, but let Ant off the hook. He was literally praised.
But he hasn't done a TV interview.
No, but it was fully. It was poor little Ant. He's had such a hard time, and now he's
Yeah,
got a
and-
lovely new girlfriend, and everything's fine. And Katie Price has not been given an easy ride by the media over the years. I appreciate that she is a complicated and sometimes difficult person, but they really was.
But Kelvin, in this interview, they let her run rings around them. And maybe that's the problem when you put a real lightweight like Richard Bacon, who's not a journalist.
Well, also, he hasn't got much of a leg to stand on the old drugs thing, has he?
He's from my hometown of Manchester.
Well, you could argue because he took cocaine himself and got sacked from Blue Peter, actually, he might have a more interesting perspective. But I think the issue is he's not a journalist. He's sort of a lightweight entertainment presenter who they're using to try and fill the shoes of Piers Morgan, and he's failing spectacularly.
But I look at these things as a viewer, and I think they're not asking the questions that I want to hear asked.
Yeah.
So, like, when you interviewed Mr. Giuliani, you asked him soft questions, you know, about his hair melting and stuff like that, but you did it in a way that you got the answers. And that's what we want to see. When people are skirting around it, it's pointless television.
I think that the media landscape is very, very different in a post-Caroline Flack world, and I think that I, as a journalist, am now always very aware of when I'm asking somebody questions, there might be more going on under the surface, and maybe it does make for softer or less compelling journalism.
But she could have killed someone, and that was the point they needed to make. But Rebecca Reed, Calvin Robinson, Dawn Neeson, thank you so much. Coming up, is Prince Charles wrong to call for a warlike footing against climate change in his latest woke outburst? The Superstar panel will be back to delve into that as the media buzz continues. Plus, we'll bring you more of the newspaper front pages too. But next, should Boris scrap his green agenda in order to prevent a cost of living crisis that could force Brits to choose between eating and heating? Tory MP and chair of the Net Zero Scrutiny Group, Craig McKinlay, pleads his case to the PM straight after the break.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. Things have turned a bit colder, and tomorrow will feel certainly chilly, but with a bit more sunshine and with lighter winds, probably won't feel quite as cold as it did today. Quite quickly tomorrow evening, however, we're going to see a frost returning. Follow the isobars. They point all the way up to the north, which is where our air is coming from. The isobars still pretty close together across the northeast, but a very, very windy day here. And still those winds continue to bring wintry showers across the northeast throughout the night. So there is the potential for snow showers and a continued risk of ice across the northeast, but it could also be icy across parts of Wales and Northern Ireland, with showers coming in here and temperatures dropping close to freezing. Most towns and cities just about staying above zero, but certainly rural areas there will be a frost. But actually for most it'll be a fine, bright, cold start to Wednesday. Still some showers for Northern Ireland and Wales, some snow on the hills, but they should fade away. And the showers also fading from the far northeast. Still a cold wind blowing along these North Sea coasts, but for most the wind's a lot lighter during tomorrow, and with largely sunny skies. Temperatures still a touch below average, but as I said, probably feeling a bit more pleasant than today. Quite quickly though, look at the blue taking hold of the map. This is tomorrow evening. Quite quickly a frost forming, temperatures dropping with those light winds and clear skies. So it's going to be a very cold start to Thursday. Towns and cities likely to be -1, -2. Rural areas -5, -6, maybe -10, where there's snow lying on the mountains of Scotland. Now it will slowly turn milder across Northern Ireland as wet weather comes in here. Mostly rain, but some snow on the hills. And we'll see that then working into Wales, Northern England, Scotland. Rain at low levels, but some snow on the higher routes here for a time on Thursday. Further south, it'll be all rain as things eventually turn milder, but another cold day across the east, and again turning frosty with the potential for some ice on Thursday night.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Shouldn't be like this, should it? In the UK in 2021, Britain shouldn't be forced to choose between heating and eating. That's the grim turn of phrase used by trusted ITV money expert Martin Lewis to describe the looming cost of living crisis. In a new interview, he warned this year is going to be a very tough year for many people. We need to look at what we can do now and how we can protect those people who will need to choose between heating and eating. There are already some who are having to make that choice. Now, amid fears that energy bills could double to £2,000, the Tory Net Zero Scrutiny Group, chaired by my guest tonight, Craig McKinlay, has implored Boris Johnson to get real about the dire situation facing our less fortunate. In a letter To the Daily Telegraph, the group's MPs, including lots of former ministers, actually warned domestic tariffs will increase hugely, feeding directly into a cost of living crisis for many and pushing them into what is bluntly called fuel poverty. High energy prices, whether for domestic heating or for domestic transport, are felt most painfully by the lowest paid. Boris didn't exactly have a concrete plan of action when confronted about the issue in today's briefing.
The difficulty is that you end up also cutting fuel bills for a lot of people who perhaps don't need the support in quite the direct way that we need to give it. We need to help people who are in fuel poverty the most. But as I say, we will listen to consumers and to businesses.
But Craig's group have suggested one easy fix that the PM can make without delay: scrapping green levies, which could shave close to £200 off the average energy bill. And Craig McKinlay joins me now. Craig, it's never easy, is it, for you to publicly speak out against your leader? Can you talk to me about this letter and why you felt it was necessary to make it public?
What is obvious that's coming round the corner in probably about 6 weeks' time is a new assessment by Ofgem as to what the new fixed price tariff will be for the following 6 months. I'm glad you've mentioned Martin Lewis there, because I was on a Radio 2 with him earlier today, and he's really got underneath the algorithm and how Ofgem calculate these bills, and it's likely, under his estimation, a man that I think we do trust on money matters, that these prices will go up by 51%. So that will be from the current fixed price of $1,277 for the average household up to a whopping $1,925. And that's for the average household. So for many, it'll be a lot more. Some might be a lot less. But for those who are, suffering, price rises and all the rest of it, this could lead people into fuel poverty and, bluntly, that choice between heating and eating. Of course, for, someone like me, I get, and you probably, Dan, you get a reasonable salary. Yes, it's painful, but it's not catastrophic. I don't like spending money on what is a basic necessity, keeping your house warm and getting hot water. But for many, this is going to be really serious because these price rises hit the lowest paid highest. So hence we wrote this letter to both the PM and the Chancellor saying, there are two problems here. Number one is the here and now, these price rises, and we have 5% VAT on domestic fuel and energy, which was meant to be a Brexit dividend. We can remove that. Weren't allowed to remove that while we're in the EU. OK, 5% isn't much, but as the saying goes, every little helps. But the other big cost, up to 23% of your electricity bill, are the climate change and the green type levies. Now, I don't want to get a discussion tonight about net zero, but this is a here and now problem. And I cannot imagine by doubling the fuel bills for the lowest paid and pensioners, we're going to solve global warming in the next 6 months. But we can solve the bills right now until we can get some normality back in the markets. Now, how do we get normality back in the markets? That's the second prong. Yeah. Then we have to maximise our domestic gas supply, because we have the answer in the North Sea and in fracking. I know that's not palatable to some, but I tell you what isn't palatable politically, that is putting the lower paid into a really precarious situation. And I cannot see, in geopolitical terms, the sense in buying gas. I mean, this is Europe more than us, actually. We have a bit more of a mixed gas supply. Why are we putting billions into the pockets of Putin to actually be able to create new weaponry on the borders of the Ukraine, Estonia, and the other external borders of the EU? It is geopolitical madness, because we have the answer under our feet. Now, there has been a 20-year problem with our energy policy. We haven't adopted nuclear at the rate by which our old nuclear power stations are going out of commission, but we've suddenly woken up to that, and we will have new nuclear power stations. But
exactly, but it takes a lot of time. Exactly, whereas fracking is something that could at least solve the interim issue. Do you get any sense, following the publication of your letter, Craig, which has had a lot of pickup, that the Prime Minister or the Chancellor are considering either dropping the VAT, which, as you say, was a Brexit promise, or scrapping the green levies, or at least reducing them? Because people Craig, are just so shocked to know that, 23% of most energy bills go to these green levies. I just think it's outrageous.
Well, what this has flushed out, Dan, is people didn't realise before how much of their bill was supporting, the wind generators and all those other things that have been proving not to work very well and not to produce electricity at a very effective price. So that's one good thing that's come out of this. Now, I certainly hope to be speaking to the Chancellor and the Prime Minister over the next few days. As you say, our letter has caused quite a few ripples. It's been in lots of media, and thanks for having me on this evening, because this needs to be discussed. The energy policy of the UK in the longer term needs discussing. But just around the corner, 6 weeks' time, Ofgem will be sitting down saying, on the 1st of April, your new bill will be X, likely to be 50% more than it is today. I mean, this comes down to fundamentals, doesn't it? I don't put my heating on at home for fun. I don't get hot water for fun. This is a basic essential that I think we need in a first world country like the UK. It is what is needed by, millions of people across this country. None of us do it for fun. And the other thing, of course, is that businesses are already suffering massive price rises. They don't have the fixed price guarantee that domestic have. And those price rises feed through into inflation permanently and absolutely. So we could take a bit of froth off the inflation that's building up by this measure as well.
No, well, I completely agree. And Craig McKinlay, thank you for the good work that the Conservative Net Zero Scrutiny Group is doing. We are very often relying on Tory backbenchers at the moment to guide the Prime Minister towards doing the right thing. Coming up, is Sadiq Khan really about to decriminalise drugs in London? Political firebrand Anne Widdecombe takes aim at the failed mayor's bonkers pilot scheme that's in uncancelled. But next, is it appropriate for heir to the throne, Charles, to act like some sort of Greta Thunberg tribute act? My panel will dig into that and bring you more of tomorrow's front pages in the Media Buzz next.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
More of tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz. And lots of front pages just delivered, so let's get straight to them. The Guardian reads, Johnson admits NHS could be overwhelmed in coming weeks. That's quite an interesting view of what the PM said today. Also on the front page, the judge in Virginia Giuffre's legal case has said he would make a decision pretty soon about Prince Andrew's attempt to have the case thrown out. The Eye leads with daily COVID tests for 100,000 key workers involved in food, transport and borders. Downing Street says the army could be used to fill staff shortages in key public services. The Daily Telegraph reports testing rules will be relaxed to solve staff shortages. PCR requirements will be removed at hospitals, bin collections and schools have been hit hardest by the chaos. I don't think we should rely on PCR tests at all at the moment, actually. The lateral flow's fine. The Sun goes with that line from the PM, we can ride the wave. He ruled out new curbs for now and said Britain will be able to get through this. That's, of course, as a record 218,000 cases were confirmed. But as I keep saying, even Chris Whitty admitted these cases are not turning into more deaths, and that's all that matters to me. The Times also leads with today's Downing Street press conference. Elsewhere on their front page, though, Captain Preet Chandi has become the first woman of colour to complete a solo expedition to the South Pole, where she endured temperatures of minus 50 degrees Celsius on her 700-mile trek. More on the Media Buzz now with tonight's superstar panel, the former Daily Star editor Dawn Neeson, conservative commentator Calvin Robertson and the author and journalist Rebecca Reed. Now, do you know the future King Prince Charles is continuing to act a bit like some sort of Greta Thunberg activist rather than a man ready to take the throne? In an essay for the American liberal magazine Newsweek, the Prince of Wales hysterically compared global warming to the threat of nuclear war during the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. He wrote, once again, the world is on the brink and we need the mobilising urgency of a warlike footing if we are to win. While the rest of the media are fixating over a quote from Charles praising Prince Harry's equally annoying virtue signalling, which has been held up as the first step towards reconciliation, I'm actually more concerned that we've got a king in waiting sounding more like one of those insulate Britain loons. I mean, for decades, the Queen has been a beacon of stability and impartiality. So why doesn't Charles follow suit? And Dawn, just for one moment, at this very important moment in royal history for Charles, just leave the campaigning to Harry and be a politically impartial royal. Because I read his whole essay, and honestly, it could have been written by that little girl Thunberg.
Well, quite. And please, I mean, these are people that have known nothing their entire lives but the most utter privilege, lecturing us. And the scaremongering again, Dan. Where have we got in society today that everything is designed to terrorise us? The language comparing this to a nuclear war. What is that doing for kids' mental health who are believing this?
Of course. And Calvin, it's nothing like a nuclear war. I'm sorry, Prince Charles, but it's not, because a nuclear war causes instant destruction and immediately causes hundreds of thousands of deaths. And that's what we were facing back at the Cuban Missile Crisis. This is actually a problem that international leaders have got a hold of, are tackling, and yeah, it's going to take a bit of time, but I believe we have a handle of this. I have a handle on this.
Well, he's sensationalising it, isn't he? This is a problem where there are different sides to the debate and people have different perspectives on how serious this actually is. But the last time I talked about Prince Charles on here, I took a lot of grief on social media for it. It's one of the areas that people don't align with what I'm saying, because I am a monarchist. I believe in the constitution of the monarchy, but
likewise,
I think he's a danger to the monarchy. I think he's far too political. There seems to be certain topics where he thinks, you know, I can be political on this because everyone cares about this or everyone agrees with me on this. And that's not the case.
No.
That's not his role. He could be the downfall of the monarchy.
Well, yeah, because he, in this essay, seems to make the point that environmentalism isn't a political issue. But I'm sorry, when we look at what we were just speaking about with Craig McKinlay and huge energy price rises, partly because of green levies, this is a political issue. It is actually one of the most important political issues of our time. And Prince Charles just needs to learn to butt the hell out of it.
Well, it seems to me he's very much in line with the WEF agenda on this topic in particular, as well as many others. And that worries me more than anything, to be honest. I don't want a king who is politically aligned with the global elites. I don't think that's good for our interests.
Well, and plus with this, it's the hypocrisy, isn't it? This is a bloke who boasts about running his car on vintage wine and cheese, wasn't it? I mean, who has leftover wine for
Rebecca,
a start? But
is there a defence of Prince Charles here?
I mean, I think there is. I inherently very much like him. I'm a monarchist through and through. And I think I think it's going to be an interesting time to be a monarchist for the coming years. Because for me, it's easy. I'm not annoyed about it. I think it's totally fine. So it's not difficult for me, but I think for other people it's going to be difficult because he's not going to stop. He has been wildly devoted to environmentalism for basically his entire life, long before it was fashionable to be so. And I don't think he's going to stop anytime soon. So I think people are either going to have to accept it or they're going to have to become non-monarchists. But I don't see Prince Charles.
But there's a recognised problem now with youngsters. Eco-anxiety is a recognised mental health disorder, and the language he uses is not helping.
But then I think that was previously it was nuclear war, and then before that it was HIV. I think there has always been something that's been in the news that children have been terrified by, and I think
so why should he be doing it?
But the thing is,
make sense.
we can't say he's going to be political, people are going to have to like it or lump it or not become monarchists. It's unconstitutional for him to be political. Therefore, we'll have to consider our political stance.
But I think that is what's going to happen.
And I think clearly Prince Charles is an arrogant man. And people want him.
Bit mean.
Well, no, because, Rebecca, if he wasn't arrogant, he would be listening to the people around him who are saying, look, we want your mother to go on and on and on. I've said on this show, and people mock me for it, I think she'll be here in decades' time.
Which I think is very sweet.
Well, you know, look, her mum lasted a very, very long time. And we would all love that.
Long may she reign.
Yes, of course, long may she reign. But we do have to accept the fact that she is in her twilight years. And so Prince Charles has an opportunity to learn from his mistakes in the past, and there have been loads of times when he has made mistakes, learn from them and change, and he doesn't seem able to do that.
Nobody is going to enjoy what I'm about to say. But I think that he would say, were he here, which would be a surprise to all of us, that it's not a political belief, that it is akin to the fact that his mother speaks very openly and beautifully about her faith. I would say he probably feels that this is like him talking about his relationship with God, that it is not a political thing, that it's a personal view.
I think he would say that. But given where we're at with the net zero agenda in this country and the sacrifices that that's going to mean for a lot of working class people who are going to be struggling to pay energy bills, I think he's wrong.
And the amount of power we have handed to China and Russia with our green issues while they just get on with it.
And the whole issue is political. It has to be resolved. It's just not Prince Charles's job to make the resolution. And when I read this essay, it was like an essay from a politician. And Prince Charles has to make a choice. You know, if you want to be a politician, then give up the throne. You know, that is possible. And actually, the polling shows that the British public would be very behind that, because it would mean you'd get a nice young King William
not how it
and
works.
Queen
We don't
Kate.
just pick the sexy ones.
And in contrast, it is his job, or the Queen's job, to defend
Well,
the faith.
look, we have had kings that have made choices. You know, one who very famously chose an American divorcee who was friends with Hitler instead of the throne. That is a choice. Prince Charles could make that choice.
He was friends with Hitler too. It wasn't just Wallace.
No, of course he was. But what I'm saying is that Prince Charles can make that choice, and the monarchy would survive. We have King William and Kate ready, and I know we've gone to a place that we didn't necessarily need to go, but Prince Charles needs to rein it in. That's the point. Now, spouses Brian and Kate Prentice have stolen the hearts of the internet with a romantic re-proposal. Okay, let me follow this. So actress Katie was stunned when her other half surprised her on a mother-daughter trip to New York and got down on one knee in Central Park 25 years after he first proposed in questionable fashion. Take a look.
No, Mom, go back. What are you doing? Why are you here? I'm so confused.
You didn't get a romantic proposal the first time around. So I thought I'd try again. You can make me happy forever.
Oh, isn't that lovely? Brian wanted a do-over after his first proposal, which sounds like something out of a hidden camera show, went wrong. Here's Katie describing the moment when she thought she had been pulled over by the police only for her husband-to-be to appear.
I had my head on the steering wheel. I was not looking up. I was so upset. And I look up, and there is my boyfriend at the time. And I called my friend, and I was like, he's not romantic, is he? And she's like, yeah, no. And I was like, okay. But you guys, people can change, because he is.
Well done, Brian, for finally getting it right. And maybe Prince Charles should learn a lesson from that. You see, you can change. It is possible. Dawn Neeson, Calvin Robinson, Rebecca Reid, do stand by, because coming up, the crowning moment of the show as I coronate today's greatest Britain and Union Jackers, but I will use my panel's nominations to do so. And will Sadiq Khan's bonkers plan to legalise drugs make London even more anarchic? Political firebrand Anne Widdecombe will be here in mere seconds, right after we take a look at what's coming up on tomorrow's show.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, does Prince Andrew have a future in the monarchy? And will he ever recover in the court of public opinion? Royal author Robert Jobson reacts to the Duke's civil sex case hearing in Crown Jewels. Loose women turned COVID voice of reason Denise Welch joins me for an exclusive interview on Omicron madness. Plus, GB News favourites Brendan O'Neill and Rod Little sound off on a topic that matters to you. And I'll break down more of the day's top headlines with my superstar panel. Social media sensation Adam Brooks, columnist and broadcaster Emily Carver, and political commentator Daisy McAndrew. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
And I'm looking forward to that, but it's time now for Uncancelled. And you know this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Now, cannabis will effectively be decriminalised by Labour's failed Mayor of lawless London, Sadiq Khan. Police officers will be told not to arrest young people caught with the Class B drug and offer them counselling or drug awareness courses instead. They'll be sent back to their family home rather than face police custody. The Daily Telegraph has revealed 3 London boroughs, Lewisham, Bexley and Greenwich, will be the first to bring in new rules later this year. But both the Conservative government and the Labour leadership want much tougher action on drug users. Khan's team suggests they want police time to be better spent on serious and violent crime rather than dealing with those caught with recreational drugs. 2021 was, of course, the worst year of teenage killings in London. However, a Tory source has described the mayor's plan as mad. Let me bring in Anne Widdecombe now from Devon. Anne, does Sadiq Khan just want to destroy London? Is that what he's out to do?
Well, I can hardly believe he's done this because a few years ago, in the time of Tony Blair's government, David Blunkett, as Home Secretary, degraded the classification of cannabis from a Class B drug to a Class C. And everybody said, oh, this was a wonderful Liberal measure, it was totally overdue and all the rest of it. In not very much time at all, at the request of the police, they had to reclassify it as a B. And it is folly to look upon cannabis as harmless. It is not. First of all, for a certain percentage of people who take it, it will become the gateway to hard drugs. Secondly, we now know that people have had cannabis when they've been at the wheel of a car and caused accidents. We know that people have committed violence while under the influence of cannabis. And what is more, if you decriminalise cannabis, then as far as the drugs barons are concerned, all their profits then are going to be with the hard drugs. And so they're going to be pushing heroin and crack cocaine and all the rest of it much, much harder. And I recommend a study that was done by the University of Amsterdam, which showed that because in Amsterdam, of course, they did decriminalise soft drugs, which showed that as soft drug usage went up, and it's common ground it will if it's decriminalised, so also hard drug use went up. And there is a connection between the two. I think this is a very, very ill thought out measure.
It's just fascinating to me, Anne, that when you look at these far left extremist politicians, they very often ruin cities when they become mayors. I actually compare what's happening to London to what's gone on in San Francisco. A hard left city where no one actually wants to live there anymore because there's so much crime, so much homelessness, and drugs are out of control. So what can we do to clip the wings of Sadiq Khan so that London doesn't suffer the same fate, given we do actually have a Tory government?
well, I don't know that you're going to be able to clip the wings of an elected mayor. But I think what you can do, and what should be happening, is that the police should be expected to be far more focused on knife crime, on gangs, on drugs, rather than arresting street preachers or whatever. And if one looks at what happened to Giuliani was the mayor of New York. The crime rate was through the roof. He introduced zero tolerance, put another 11,000 police officers on the streets of New York. So, it's easier said than done, these things. But then he reduced the crime rate enormously. And New York was very grateful to him. And I think we should learn from that. Zero tolerance is the way forward, not just patting people on the head and saying, there, you haven't done anything so very bad.
And so you think it's going to be about the Home Secretary empowering the Met, essentially?
I think that is very, very much what we need. We need proper focus from the Met on what really matters and what is serious crime, rather than, the endless recording of hate crimes and all the rest of it. Focus on crime that takes lives, that destroys lives. And I have to say this, you may think, well, if somebody takes cannabis, they're not doing much harm, but they're using the dealers who are peddling that and harder drugs to the poor and the deprived. And one person's recreation is another person's deprivation. And I don't understand why the people who call for the decriminalisation of drugs cannot see that. It is a social evil. And we've never really had a proper go at zero tolerance of drugs. And that is what we need to do, all the way from the supply of the hard drugs, all the way down to the possession of the soft drugs. That is what we need. That is what I advocated 20 years ago and still advocate.
Well, I completely agree, Anne, but you know why, and it is because these London liberal elite cretins are all at their parties quaffing champagne and very often snorting cocaine openly at parties because they think that their habit is okay, and they don't realise the harm that it causes in society, the county line gangs. And I think it's really despicable. And I imagine a lot of these folk are probably friends with Sadiq Khan.
Well, I don't know whether they're friends with Sadiq Khan or not, but you've certainly described a phenomenon that we all know exists, that at middle-class dinner parties, out comes the cocaine. And that cocaine has been obtained, no matter through how many stages, but it has ultimately been obtained from a dealer who is dealing that stuff very, very widely with huge social harm as a result. Cannabis is not an innocent drug. It can cause psychosis, and we do need to understand that there is a danger to becoming reliant on cannabis or to taking cannabis too often. There is an enormous danger to it. And somehow the politicians are scared to say that. Well, they better start saying it because it's true.
Well, I've seen lives ruined by marijuana, and I know there's a lot of pushback on this, but I absolutely believe it is a gateway drug. I really do, because I've seen it in my own life with people who are close to me, and I have seen lives ruined by marijuana. So I completely agree. We need a zero-tolerance approach, and Priti Patel is going to have to make sure she empowers the Met, because what Sadiq Khan is doing in London is just destroying the city, and it's absolutely mad. But Anne Widdecombe, thank you so much, and we'll speak again very soon. It's time now, though, to reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. My superstar panel are back with me. It is the Daily Star's Dawn Neeson, GB News presenter Calvin Robinson, and the author and journalist Rebecca Reed. Dawn Neeson, your nominee for Greatest Britain tonight.
My nomination for Greatest Britain is Captain Preet Chandy, who is the army medic who has just trekked solo.
Oh, yes, we saw her on the front of the Times, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Just trekked solo to the South Pole 40 days it took at minus 50 degrees, 70 mile an hour winds, dragging a 90 kilogram supplies on a sledge behind her. She's the first woman of colour to reach the pole solo. But, I mean, what an amazing woman,
Well, good on her, but I
regardless of her
can't think of
skin colour.
anything worse.
I'd love to do it, but I'm too old.
Calvin Robinson, your nomination.
Nayib Armando Bukele Ortez, otherwise known as the CEO of El Salvador. He's the one who initiated Bitcoin as their national currency, which is the best freedom initiative you can have. But he's also encouraging people to live a healthy lifestyle, to exercise, to combat COVID-19, rather than just taking a risky jab.
And Rebecca Reed, your nomination for Greatest Britain tonight.
Mine is a three-way tie, and I have to read their names off my phone, to my shame. But Lord Cashman, Lord Lexton and Professor Paul Johnson, who were the main campaigners behind Turing's Law, which basically pardons people who shouldn't need to be pardoned, but who unquestionably deserve it. People who basically were found guilty, and I use that word very loosely, of being gay.
Yeah, well, I think they are the Greatest Britons tonight. Actually, I'm going to go with Rebecca Reed because it's not a crime, is it? It's not a crime, and it should never have been a crime. Tonight's Union Jackass nominations. Dawn Neeson, who are you going for?
An eternal jackass. I'm going to go for Tony Blair, Sir Tony Blair.
Yes, we've been speaking about that
Who
this
should
week.
have, for the first time in his life, shown some humility and some understanding and turned down.
Calvin Robinson, your nominee.
Your favourite Nicola Sturgeon, because she cancelled Hogmanay.
I know.
New Year's celebrations in Scotland are world
And she sent in the cops. She sent in the cops, Calvin. Rebecca Reed, your nominee.
Elizabeth Holmes, she girl-bossed too close to the sun, and unfortunately I think she's going to suffer for it.
Yes, so this is the American, now criminal former entrepreneur who sort of said she was creating a new tech empire and it was all fake, right?
Wasn't. And do you know what? A little part of me admires not only how great she looked in the polo neck, but her ability to massively lie and get people to give her money. But I think ultimately, if you're going to do it, you've got to do it well enough that you get away with it.
Well, I'm sorry, I've got to go with Calvin Robinson, though. Nicola Sturgeon is today's
For a change.
jackass. Because how on earth can you cancel Hogmanay? I mean, come on, it's madness. And the way she sent those cops in, Calvin, I'm not saying she personally sent them in, but their behaviour was a direct consequence of the draconian, authoritarian laws that she introduced, just trying to stop people having a good time. It's ridiculous. What a brilliant superstar panel. Dawn Neeson, Calvin Robinson, Rebecca Reed, thank you so much. Thank you to you for your company tonight. I'll, of course, be back again tomorrow from 9 p.m. But Headliners is up next, so stick around for that. Good night.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. Things have turned a bit colder and tomorrow will feel certainly chilly, but with a bit more sunshine and with lighter winds, probably won't feel quite as cold as it did today. Quite quickly tomorrow evening, however, we're going to see a frost returning. Follow the isobars. They point all the way up to the north, which is where our air is coming from. The isobars still pretty close together across the northeast, but a very, very windy day here. And still those winds continue to bring wintry showers across the northeast throughout the night. So there is the potential for snow showers and a continued risk of ice across the northeast, but it could also be icy across parts of Wales and Northern Ireland, with showers coming in here and temperatures dropping close to freezing. Most towns and cities just about staying above zero, but certainly rural areas there will be a frost. But actually for most it'll be a fine, bright, cold start to Wednesday. Still some showers for Northern Ireland and Wales, some snow on the hills, but they should fade away. And the showers also fading from the far northeast. Still a cold wind blowing along these North Sea coasts, but for most the wind's a lot lighter during tomorrow, and with largely sunny skies. Temperatures still a touch below average, but as I said, probably feeling a bit more pleasant than today. Quite quickly though, look at the blue taking hold of the map. This is tomorrow evening. Quite quickly a frost forming, temperatures dropping with those light winds and clear skies. So it's going to be a very cold start to Thursday. Towns and cities likely to be -1, -2. Rural areas -5, -6, maybe -10, where there's snow lying on the mountains of Scotland. Now, it will slowly turn milder across Northern Ireland as wet weather comes in here. Mostly rain, but some snow on the hills. And we'll see that then working into Wales, Northern England, Scotland. Rain at low levels, but some snow on the higher routes here for a time on Thursday. Further south, it'll be all rain as things eventually turn milder, but another cold day across the east, and again turning frosty, with the potential for some ice on Thursday night.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview Channel 236.
On Sky, we're Channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to